So this is to be the fifth video in this writing workshop series. Hopefully these are helpful to you. I can't really tell if anybody is watching them or not. If it's helpful, let me know. If it's not helpful, or if there's something I could do more or differently or better, then let me know that as well, and I can try to help. So these tomatoes will make a little more sense in a little bit when we get to our topic. But I wanted to sort of recap a little bit, if I can get out of this and look over at our list of videos here. We did getting organized and outlines, and we talked about how to format citations, and then even some citation tricks to hopefully help save some clicking and that sort of thing. So today I want to actually get into some writing, and I don't want to make a recording of myself typing a whole lot, but we will sort of quickly work through some thoughts and some ways to get your words onto paper and get going here. So first we need a topic, and I chose to do sort of a debate on GMOs. There's my tomatoes. GMOs are genetically modified organisms, and we talk about this a lot here in the College of Agriculture at Auburn University. And almost all of the produce that you purchase in the grocery store is a GMO of some sort. It's been genetically modified. Perhaps things that you buy at the farmer's market or someplace like that is not, but probably that stuff has been modified as well. The seeds are some hybrid seed, and the reason that we modify organisms is really to hopefully increase the yield. We want to grow bigger corn and more cotton and bigger tomatoes and that sort of thing. The grapes that you buy in the grocery store are often seedless. Grapes don't want to be seedless. We've modified them to be seedless so that they're more fun. Grapes are not generally that big. Look at how big the strawberries are that you buy in the grocery store. They don't generally work that way unless they've been modified in some way. So GMOs work to our favor. Now there's some debate on whether or not GMOs are appropriate or should be allowed and that sort of thing. The argument, I think, is that whatever modification we did is unnatural, and that's going to make its way down to the consumer. Now, this is an exaggeration here. Certainly, this is not how we modify an organism. You don't inject the fruit. It's a DNA thing, and I don't understand how or why it works. But that's what we do here in my department, at least at Auburn, is we figure out ways to make corn grow bigger and faster and stronger. Another reason we modify organisms is to make them resistant to herbicides. We call them Roundup Ready crops. We want to grow corn that is resistant to herbicides. That way we can spray herbicides on the field and it kills the weeds, but it doesn't kill the corn. And this is huge because the weeds compete for nutrients and cause all kinds of problems, and it's very expensive to try to weed that out manually. And so that's another reason that we like GMOs. We can breed these crops to be resistant to drought and resistant to herbicides and resistant to certain types of disease and all sorts of things. So obviously I am very much for the notion of GMO, but there's some arguments against it. So that's what I think our paper should be about this time. So let's get going. We'll get a blank canvas here with Microsoft Word, and you ignore my chat thing going in the background. And so if we start with our outline, you remember every paper should start with an introduction, and then we know if we have an introduction, we'll have to have a conclusion. as well. And so there's two pieces of my outline already. And so I always like to answer the question in a paper, the implications, or who cares? Why is this a thing? Why do we even talk about it? And so instead of saying who cares, that's not very professional or academic. Let's call it implications. Why is this a thing? Why talk about GMOs? So we have our implications, and then we might have arguments for, and then arguments against. And then hopefully, if I am to take a position in this paper, my arguments for will certainly be stronger than my arguments against, but I don't want to act as if there are no arguments against GMOs. That would be leaving out a big portion of the discussion on GMOs. So I need to include that, but my position here will be that there are much stronger arguments for the use of GMOs than against. And so that's the purpose of this paper. And I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main sections here. So within these sections, I know that my introduction and conclusion will probably be rather short paragraphs, and maybe let's say that this needs to be a 3-page paper. And so I've got 3 pages and really 3 main sections here, but I can do a little bit better and break these up some more to make life a little easier for me. So implications, this section can include some subsections such as, and this is really my brainstorming session. This is when the very first part of my outline, when I'm thinking of things to talk about. So the implications might be how widespread are GMOs. Oh, and I just had a thought. And this happens all the time when you're doing these, and this is the reason that I love doing these outlines like this. In my introduction, I might talk a little bit about history of GMOs. And as a side note, notice there's no apostrophe here. This is just GMOs, plural. There's no apostrophe there because GMOs doesn't own anything. It's not possessive. It's just plural. GMOs, just like organisms. GMOs. There's no apostrophe there. Pay attention when you're doing your apostrophes and make sure you don't throw in extra ones. This happens all the time when you say the 1990s. 1990s. You just put an S on it. It's never apostrophe S apostrophe unless the 1990s owned something, or you might just say 90s, the 90s. In this case, the apostrophe would go in the front because you're omitting the 19. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. So history of GMOs might be a big part of the introduction. And then the implications, how many people are using GMOs, how large is the industry, and I'm just outlining notes for myself. So these things tie into the implications, the who cares. If we can say that the GMO industry is a $40 billion market, well, that's important. That's a lot of money, and that's why we care. So maybe that's enough for implications. Let's move on. Arguments for, these are easy. Increased yield. This means we get more corn per acre when we use a genetically modified corn, a hybrid corn. Hybrid corn, sometimes you have yellow corn and you have white corn, and then the hybrid is a mix of the two, or a sweet corn. They can modify corn to taste a certain way, or to be sweeter, or whatever. And so I think I misspelled yield. Yep. So arguments for, and then herbicide resistant easier harvest. They can breed corn and cotton and other things to have qualities that make them easier to harvest and clean up and that sort of thing. They can do all sorts of things with genetics and crops these days. So arguments against might be unnatural, and I'm sort of just coming up with this off the top of my head. Unnatural, unhealthy. So, and I really can't think of anything else to go there. And then the conclusion would be GMOs are okay? Question mark. I need to answer that question. So each of these things, so yeah, now I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. This is a lot to cover in 3 pages. And so now if I were just starting this assignment, I would probably save this and then walk away and maybe come back tomorrow or come back in a couple of days even. I've done enough on this for now. And then when I come back, I can just do each of these sections and say, today I'm going to do this section. And we talked about this in the outlining, you know, how we can chunk this project up into smaller things instead of trying to sit down and write the whole thing all at once. But since we're here, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll do the introduction, and this is where we actually need to research, because I don't know anything about the history of GMOs, and so let's do just a little bit of research and see what we can come up with. I'm going to go back to my pictures, and I'm just gonna do a search for history of GMOs. And I see that there are actually some scholarly articles here, which I'm going to skip. Remember, we used Wikipedia before, and that gave us actually a lot of pretty good information. And I'm gonna just click on a couple of things here. I'm gonna go see what is on Wikipedia. GMO. And I see Wikipedia has a whole page, and GMO obviously includes, this is one of the arguments against right here, where they've modified these fish so that they glow in the dark. That's obviously a bad idea. So GMOs applies to all sorts of things. We do this with cows to be bigger. Is it humane? But I'm really more interested in crops, and so we need to make that limitation in our introduction to make sure our reader knows that we're talking about crops only, and that there may be other implications for different areas. So let's talk about plants. Oh, look, there's a whole, I'll click on the history. Humans have domesticated blah blah blah. And so here are some numbers. Remember, we said that we like to use quantifiable information wherever possible. So I might even start with this line right here. Humans have domesticated plants. I'll delete out the animals. Humans have domesticated plants since around 1200 BCE. Blah blah blah. And then I actually have my reference. I can click on that and go, and here's an actual reference to a print article, and I can cite that in my paper. So let's go back over to my paper, and I'm going to resist the urge to copy and paste because I want this to be pretty much my own words. But I can say we have been domestic. Let's say altering plant genetics in some way since around 1200 BC. Was it 1200 or 12,000? Let's go back. What did it say? $12,000. That was a long time ago. I don't know that we were actually around then. So that's a good point. You need to double check this. Did this guy mean to say 12,000 or 1,200? In that case, we may actually need to dig into this piece here. We got to go here anyway to get the citation. Remember our previous video, so I'm not going to talk about that again because we talked about all of this in the previous video. And I'm going to go down here. I need another section, references, and then this actually goes on the next page. I'm going to insert page break so my references are on another page. This should be centered, and then my very first reference goes right there. And on the references, the first line or the second line is indented, so it should be like that. And so this whole page should follow that format. So this is handy. I can see my list of references and my document on one page here. So this, since I have not been around since 12, that guy said 12,000, so we're going to stick with that. I was not around 12,000 BC, so I cannot say this. So I'm going to cite Kingsbury 2009. So that's sort of an interesting opening sentence that I can build upon, and I have properly cited it, and so I can move on to what's next. And you can continue to use Wikipedia in that way if it's helpful. It may be that you have to find other pages or plant-specific pages. Oh, they actually have that book in our library. But anyway, that's how this works. I see this video is getting sort of long, so I'll leave you with that. And that's generally how I would do this. I would flesh out this opening paragraph or paragraphs, and then move on to each of these sections. And then once I've finished, read what you just wrote. Does it make any sense? If yes, then great. If no, then you need to rework it, because if it didn't make any sense to you, then it's certainly not going to make any sense to your reader. Keep a note of your word count. See, we're up to 60 words almost with just our outline and stuff. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. Again, if not, please let me know and I'll quit spending time on these things. Thanks, and have a great day.